Hello to the curious and the thoughtful. It's Ellie again. Great to see you. Have you noticed that everyone is waiting to see who's going to come out of the shadows and be our savior? Don't we have leaders all over the place? Those are the ones who are all puffed up and privileged, and they're the ones who are supposed to be saving us from all of our dilemmas. That's the reason why they're leaders. A lot of people are waiting for this mysterious warrior that could potentially pop out at any moment, either from our leadership pool or from international partners or even from the cosmos. We are starting to worry that there aren't any real warriors out there. So where are we supposed to find those warriors, those people or those entities that are supposed to be saving us from this world that just seems to keep plummeting forward into the dark unknown? In today's show, I'm actually going to show you how to spot the warrior. They're courageous and they're disciplined and they're protective of themselves and others. They've got it together and they're almost impossible to find in the world because they aren't out there. Actually, they really aren't. We can look and we can look and we look, but they aren't out there. The danger of waiting for one to come out of the shadows and to emerge and to be our hero is that what it does when we do that is it casts a shadow over the true warrior that does exist. Spoiler alert. That's the warrior that sits inside us. I'm going to show you a way that you can recognize your own warrior instincts without letting them take over in dark, destructive ways. And I'm going to use my own personal experience in this as well. Something that happened to me quite a few years ago, which I think probably qualifies as being a really illustrative kind of example. So the first thing we need to do when we want to harness the power of the warrior within is we need to figure out, first and foremost, what are we fighting? Are we fighting something real? Or are we just fighting with our own shadow? So years ago, I went on a first date and I didn't know this fella very well. And I made a big mistake. I was quite young, but I made a big mistake of inviting him into my apartment after the date. And let's just say the visit got a little bit out of hand. This is a true story. And I could tell there was a moment in time where I could tell that this was going to end badly for me. So I was able to identify in that moment that this was not a battle relating to ego. This was a real tangible risk to my life in the moment. Okay. So I was not physically stronger than this person, but I kind of had to harness something in me that would allow me to get into a moment of safety. And so what I had at my disposal was not physical power, but I did have the power of my words. And so I used the power that I had. And I remember exactly word for word what I said and the noticeable difference that I saw in this person. I said, "Whatever happens to me today will happen to you tomorrow." It came out, I don't remember now whether I had planned for it to come out that way or whether it was my warrior rising in the aspect of me that is most powerful, which was the words that I had at my disposal, and I just intuitively or instinctively harnessed it to my benefit. However, I do remember the look in his eyes when I said it. His eyes changed. He went from being determined to questioning himself. And let's just say 5 seconds later, he was out of my apartment. He was gone. He actively shifted because whatever I said was exactly the right thing. And that's the warrior archetype at play. And that's the light side. That's where you know you're getting it right. I could tell that it was my warrior kicking in because there was a clarity there about whether it's a life and death situation, a real situation, tangible, that's required, because it wasn't about winning an argument. It wasn't about protecting my image or my reputation. It was about protecting my safety. And that's how I knew it was real. But also it was the warrior because it was resourceful. It wasn't about defending myself with brute strength because I didn't have any brute strength, right? So I couldn't fake it. It was about harnessing my strength, the thing that I really have that belongs to me. And it deeply resonated with the other person. Whatever it is that I said worked. And that's when you know it's the warrior. That person immediately understood the implication of my words. You know, what happens to me today will happen to you tomorrow. It resonated. And that's how I was able to look back now and see that it was an archetypal power that I had harnessed. It needs to have clarity, it needs to be natural, and it needs to resonate. So it's an actual power that rises within you and you harness it because it's yours. That's when you know you have the warrior power at your disposal. That's an example of the warrior archetype being integrated into a person rather than it being worshipped. I didn't glorify the concept of violence or having power over this person. As soon as the warrior in me had done its job, it went back. It was put back into the box where it sits idle for most of the time. And it sits there until it is genuinely needed again. If I had lingered on that power by attempting to do something else as he was walking out the door, or following up with some other words or some other action or something, that warrior archetypal power in me would have gone from being light to dark. It would have become something sour, and it could very well have turned against me. That was an example from personal, genuine experience. And, you know, in these episodes, I'm trying to really think about my own personal experiences, and I'm digging deep to be able to show you how I come to the conclusion that I'm expressing to you in each episode. So that was an example of harnessing the warrior instinct inside me. Let me give you some examples of when you should keep your warrior at bay and not harness it, because the risk of doing so is that it will become a shadow trait and go sour instead. One example is the online arguments. You know, people who write comments to each other that are kind of going back and forth and insulting each other and always having to win the argument. Well, that's not really the warrior being harnessed. That's basically ego being harnessed. Another example might be if you are with family or close friends and you end up in some kind of a disagreement. There's a point in that disagreement. You know, banter and disagreement is healthy because it helps with boundaries. It helps to understand, you know, you exchange ideas and you don't have to agree on everything. But there might be a point in that disagreement where you're overstepping and you're going beyond what's healthy for the relationship. Well, in that moment, before you accept and harness your warrior instinct, that's where reason would say to you, you know, what's more important to me, my relationship or winning this argument? And chances are it's going to be the relationship. And that's when you hold your warrior at bay. Or it could be, as the third example, a workplace conflict, for example. Say you've got a colleague who takes credit for your work. This third one is about continuing to be the warrior, but pausing it until the right moment. Because in the workplace scenario, there may be people who don't understand why your warrior has risen. And so sometimes it's a good idea to hold it at bay until the perfect time comes along. A little bit like a better time and place, so something a bit more strategic. True strength comes when you know when to fight and when to protect yourself and when to rest as well and wait for another day. And the warrior instinct is one of the most powerful traits that we have. Every single person has it inside them. It's not about physical strength. It's about the unique personal powers that we have as individuals. It can be the very thing that saves you in a dilemma that you face in life, so long as you know when and how to use it. We each have different types of warrior traits. Mine, as I've shown you in my example, is not physical. So my warrior traits tend to be word-based. But what are your warrior traits? They might be empathic or intellectual or maybe even creative or something else. You're the only person who'll know. Unless, of course, you share it with us in the comments, in which case we'll know as well. So if today's show resonated with you and you feel as though you learnt something, there are plenty more waiting to be seen in this playlist. Welcome to the new world. This is Ellie Dreams and Under. I love knowing you're here, and I'll see you in my dreams. Bye.